Britain is no longer just divided. It's under siege from within. Farmers arrested, voters silenced, peaceful protests crushed. And now, even King Charles has reportedly exploded in fury, calling it tyranny in plain sight. Is this still democracy, or the rise of dictatorship? Britain is no longer just divided. It is under siege from within. In a shocking twist that has shaken both Westminster and Buckingham Palace, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has unleashed a wave of arrests targeting farmers and ordinary voters who dared to resist his government's heavy-handed policies. For the first time in his reign, King Charles is said to have erupted behind closed doors, furious at what he calls a betrayal of the British people. Peaceful protesters dragged away in handcuffs. Citizens detained simply for questioning authority. This is no longer politics as usual. This is the beginning of something far darker, and the king knows it. The storm began quietly, a whisper of discontent in rural towns, murmurs in farming communities over Labour's new inheritance tax on agricultural land. But those whispers turned into outrage. Family farms, passed down for generations, were suddenly revalued beyond recognition. Grieving families, already facing hardship, were forced to sell land just to pay monstrous tax bills. Rural Britain, already battered by soaring energy prices and market chaos, erupted in fury. What was once quiet countryside turned into a front line of resistance. In Kent, Norfolk, and Yorkshire, tractors blocked motorways, bonfires burned at the edges of fields, and whole communities set up peaceful camps to defy what they called an assault on survival. But instead of listening, Starmer's government answered with force. Not ordinary patrols, riot squads. Shields, tear gas, arrest quotas. Officers stormed protest camps and community halls. Farmers holding placards were handcuffed in front of their children. Elders who refused to abandon ancestral land were dragged away. Social media lit up with shocking footage. Not hardened criminals, but tearful families, teenage volunteers, and pensioners bundled into police vans, and it didn't stop at the farms. Labour's crackdown spread to towns and cities. At town hall meetings, angry citizens dared to demand answers about tax hikes, energy chaos, and failing public services. But instead of dialogue, many were silenced. Security guards dragged voters out mid-question. Some were arrested on the spot, charged not with violence but with public order offenses, or the crime of non-compliance. Non-compliance with what? Speaking too loudly. Daring to challenge authority. The message was chillingly clear. Dissent would not be tolerated. That was the moment the palace was drawn into the storm. According to sources close to Buckingham Palace, King Charles was briefed behind closed doors. He was shown raw footage from Kent and Yorkshire, scenes of chaos unfolding not in some far-off nation, but in the heart of Britain itself. What the king saw reportedly left him shaken. One video in particular, showing police dragging away a disabled veteran from a protest site, is said to have pushed Charles into a rare fury. He slammed his fist on the table and declared, "This is not democracy. This is tyranny in plain sight." Multiple insiders claim the king made an urgent late-night call to Prime Minister Starmer, and it wasn't routine diplomacy. One royal aide overheard him warning, "You are testing the foundations of this nation. The people are losing trust, and once that's gone, it cannot be rebuilt." This wasn't royal pageantry. This was the monarch of the United Kingdom sounding the alarm that Starmer's Britain was becoming something unrecognizable and dangerous. Yet Labour's response was all too familiar. Officials downplayed the backlash, dismissed the arrests as lawful enforcement, and mocked protesters as agitators bent on destabilization. But the public wasn't buying it. Reform UK leaders blasted the government's actions as undemocratic thuggery, and Starmer's approval began collapsing in real time. Meanwhile, disturbing new reports poured in. In Lincolnshire, a mother of 3 was arrested at a community meeting simply for pressing a government representative on how she could afford heating this winter. In Essex, a farmer's entire livestock was seized after he refused to pay a disputed tax bill. And in Cornwall, police were caught on camera telling young demonstrators, "You're not allowed to question government policy here. This isn't a debate." These weren't isolated incidents. This was the new face of Labour's Britain, and the public was enraged. What's unfolding now is not just political turbulence. It's a crisis of democracy, identity, and leadership. As Starmer doubles down with authoritarian tactics, the cracks in the system are no longer cracks. They're chasms. Protests have spilled far beyond farmland and village halls. They now grip the city centers of London, Birmingham, Manchester, and beyond. What began as resistance to unfair taxes has evolved into a nationwide cry for freedom. People are no longer just protesting policies. They are rejecting a system that brands dissent as disloyalty and opposition as criminality, reports confirm over 700 arrests in just 3 weeks under Starmer's so-called emergency stability measures. These vague rules give police sweeping powers to detain anyone accused of organizing unrest or spreading anti-government propaganda. In practice, this means posting a critical video, sharing a meme, attending a council meeting, or simply standing at a protest can land citizens in detention, with no trial in sight. Temporary holding centers, hastily set up in converted warehouses and abandoned military barracks, are filling with detainees, far from media scrutiny or legal aid. Families are left without answers, and legal scholars warn of the outright collapse of habeas corpus. Behind palace walls, pressure on King Charles is mounting. Constitutionally, his power is limited, but symbolically, he is the guardian of unity and national integrity. Now, he faces a dangerous choice: remain silent or step into history. Insiders suggest the king is weighing an unprecedented public address, not to declare war on his government, but to call for calm, accountability, and a restoration of democratic dignity in the face of political overreach is now undeniable. The last time a British monarch intervened in a crisis of this magnitude was the abdication of 1936. If King Charles delivers a public address, it will send shockwaves through history, a signal of just how dire Britain's situation has become. Meanwhile, Starmer's government looks increasingly isolated. Even within Labour, whispers of rebellion grow louder. A leaked memo from a senior strategist captured the mood in stark terms. "We are bleeding. Working-class support is vanishing. Reform UK, once dismissed as fringe, is now surging. Membership has exploded by 300% in a single month. Local branches are springing up across the country, organizing resistance, publishing exposés, and launching legal challenges against Labour's decrees." Nigel Farage, once seen as a political outsider, now fills stadiums and dominates online platforms. His speeches hailed as the rallying cry of a movement. The world is watching. Human rights groups across Europe and North America condemn the crackdown. The UN Human Rights Council has formally pressed the UK for answers on its mass detentions. European media describe Britain as a democracy in regression, while some diplomats quietly float sanctions if Labour's authoritarian trend continues. And yet, Starmer's response? Silence on accountability and threats of further control. At a press conference in Glasgow, when pressed about arrests and the king's reported fury, he smirked, dismissed it all as theatrics, and warned, "Those who seek to destabilize our unity from within will be met with firm action." His tone was calm, but the message chilling: resistance will be crushed. Journalists are now in the crosshairs. Independent reporters claim they've been threatened with government warnings. Editors are being reminded of their stability obligations under new media laws rushed through Parliament last month. The pressure is working. Some outlets have already pulled stories, terrified of retaliation. As trust in the mainstream press collapses, millions turn to independent creators, podcasts, and underground publications for uncensored news. Across Britain, the tension is palpable. Neighbors whisper about being watched. Schools hold emergency sessions, urging students to remain politically neutral. Churches, once sanctuaries, are now makeshift hubs for legal aid and organizing. Local councils buckle under the weight of Labour directives and collapsing public trust. But if the government hoped fear would break the people's spirit, it miscalculated. Because despite the arrests, the surveillance, and the threats, something powerful is spreading: defiance. We are not criminals, we are citizens. The slogan now stretches across banners from Cornwall to Aberdeen, uniting protesters under a single defiant voice. Petitions demanding the repeal of Labour's new laws have shattered records. Over 4 million signatures in under a month. Peaceful marches, candlelit vigils, and online campaigns surge forward, reminding Westminster that power ultimately belongs to the people. But as the showdown deepens, one question now echoes across the nation. How long can Starmer hold his iron grip before the entire system snaps? This is no longer a debate over policies or party manifestos. It is a struggle for Britain's soul. Once hailed as a global beacon of liberty and parliamentary strength, the United Kingdom is now described by foreign observers as a democracy sliding into autocracy. Starmer's grip on power, instead of calming a weary nation, is accelerating the collapse of trust in the very institutions meant to safeguard freedom. Downing Street insists it is about preserving order. The reality on the ground is darker: mass surveillance, censorship, and a growing climate of fear. Labour's legislative engine has shifted into overdrive. The latest creation, the Digital Harmony Act, a sweeping law that grants the government authority to monitor private communications, erase content it deems subversive, and punish platforms that fail to comply. Its language is deliberately vague, packed with phrases like destabilizing narratives and digital disorder, terms left wide open for government-appointed regulators to interpret. Critics warn it is the most intrusive law in modern British history, a blueprint for silencing dissent. The fallout is immediate. Independent journalists and creators who exposed police brutality or tax protests find their videos deleted, channels demonetized, even personal bank accounts frozen. Tech giants, fearing crippling fines, now preemptively censor users. WhatsApp groups once used by farmers to coordinate peaceful protests vanish overnight, infiltrated, shut down, or hijacked. Emails containing political keywords mysteriously vanish or stall. What once sounded like paranoia has now become official policy. Meanwhile, trust in the judiciary, the last supposed line of defense, is collapsing. Courts have repeatedly upheld mass detentions and riot police crackdowns, citing national security. Outrage is spreading as legal scholars and retired judges break their silence, issuing open letters warning of irreversible damage to Britain's legal framework. The Bar Council has broken its usual reserve, issuing a rare and blistering rebuke of Starmer's government. It urged ministers to reconsider their assault on civil liberties and to respect judicial independence. Yet Labour shows no sign of retreat. Instead, Starmer, increasingly isolated but defiant, has doubled down. His press machine now churns out daily accusations that Reform UK, rural protest leaders, and even sympathetic journalists are plotting to tear apart national unity. Across Britain, new posters have appeared. Report anti-UK behaviour. The chilling message could not be clearer. You are either with the government or against the country, and yet resistance is swelling. Reform UK has morphed from a party into what many now call a national resistance front. Its leaders reject violence, insisting on disciplined campaigns of legal challenges, peaceful demonstrations, and appeals to international institutions. Nigel Farage and other senior figures stress nonviolence, but with every unjust arrest, with every silenced voice, their cause gains momentum. Disillusioned citizens who never voted are now hosting town meetings. Lifelong Labour supporters are abandoning the party in disgust. Some Labour MPs, under siege from furious constituents, have begun defecting or abstaining from key votes, risking their careers in a desperate act of conscience. Meanwhile, King Charles faces the most perilous test of his reign. His private concerns, whispered through aides, no longer suffice. Silence is increasingly seen as complicity. Petitions with millions of signatures demand that the monarch break convention, to address the nation, to dissolve Parliament under royal prerogative, or at least to denounce Labour's abuses openly. Constitutional scholars are now debating what was once unthinkable. Does a monarch have a duty to intervene when democracy itself collapses? Charles's relevance, even the Crown's future authority, may hinge on a single speech. The pressure is no longer just domestic. The European Court of Human Rights has launched an inquiry into Britain's mass detentions. In Washington, a bipartisan committee of Congress has drafted a resolution condemning Starmer's government, with whispers of suspending intelligence sharing agreements unless civil liberties are restored. Leaders in Canada, Australia, and Ireland have issued veiled but stinging remarks about Britain's authoritarian drift. Outside British embassies from Berlin to New York, protesters now wave banners that read, "Free the UK." Inside the country, cracks are spreading through the state itself. The mayor of Greater Manchester has demanded a full audit of Labour's emergency enforcement funding. In Wales, civil society groups are forming independent networks to shield communities from what they call federal overreach. Britain is no longer just divided, it is splintering. Scotland's First Minister has openly defied Westminster's directives, declaring that Scotland will not be ruled by fear or repression. Even in London, the heart of government, resistance is stirring. Clergy are holding underground gatherings. Law firms are quietly offering pro bono defense to those targeted. From farms to cathedrals, from villages to borough halls, a quiet defiance is taking root. Britons are remembering their history, not just of monarchy and empire, but of liberty, protest, and justice. From the Chartists to the suffragettes, from miners' strikes to the wartime stand against tyranny, this nation has always carried one truth: power must answer to the people. Now, that principle is alive again. In every village, every borough, every brave voice refusing to be silenced. The stakes rise by the day, but so does the resistance. Britain stands at a crossroads: silence or defiance, tyranny or freedom. What happens next will define an entire generation. Here at Britain Info, our mission is clear: cut through the noise, strip away the propaganda, and bring you the raw, unfiltered truth. If you believe in freedom, if you believe in the right to speak, protest, and live without fear, then stand with us. Hit the like button to show your support. Share this message so the world can see what's happening. Comment below and we read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe to Britain Info, because in times like these, independent voices are not just important. They are essential. Stay strong, stay informed, and above all, stay free.